Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we have Christian Olson joining us in the studio. Really happy to have him here. He is running in the Republican primary race to be Commissioner of State Lands. We're going to hear all about that office, what it entails, and why he decided to run. Christian, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, I have a lot of questions about this office, as I'm sure some of our viewers do as well. But for those who may not be familiar with you and your experience, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you've worked in politics for a long time or been involved. So just, let us know just about your history and experience.
Yeah, so I started working on Republican campaigns 26 years ago. I was 14 years old and just caught the political bug. I've always loved American history and the ideas of self-government and small government, and that motivated me to get involved.
Yeah.
But after working for Republican campaigns, I ended up working and doing some policy and then working for the state in various capacities, including the Land Commissioner's office.
Okay, so how long did you work in the Land Commissioner's office?
I was there for 2 years.
And what did you learn there?
Well, first of all, I learned what the office did because as I've gone through this campaign, I've come to understand that most people don't know what the Land Commissioner's office does. And I like to say that that's a good thing. It's a lot like not knowing who your local prosecutor is. It means that you've been staying out of trouble because 90% of what the Land Commissioner's office does is sell tax-delinquent property. So if you don't pay your real estate taxes to the county collector will try to collect it for about 2 years. At the end of those 2 years, they'll send it to the Land Commissioner. And the Land Commissioner will try to collect it for about 2 years.
Okay.
And if those taxes are still not paid, then they put it up for public auction. So it's a serious job, and it's important for the counties.
Yeah, I'd like for us to talk about that in a little bit, especially whenever in regards to private property. But why did you decide to run? So you worked in the office for a few years. You've been involved in politics. What made you decide to run for this office right now?
Well, a lot of things came together. I had worked for the state for about 9 years and then spent the last few years working for myself and having that independence and having a taste of just the freedom to make decisions for myself and not worry about having a boss that it would reflect on.
Yeah.
It let me really understand that I had the ability to make some choices. And this is a really neat office. It's a really neat job, partly because you get to travel all across Arkansas and get to know people and get to really know the state. And that has been the most rewarding part of the campaign, is just getting out and meeting people.
Whenever you go and tour and meet people all across the state, because you really do have to travel all over.
Yes, you do.
What are they telling you? What are you hearing from voters the most?
So I started this campaign thinking that I would run a race entirely based off of my experience working in the office, my experience managing teams for the state government, and my background as a conservative Republican in the party. But what I've really learned is how much people are looking for their elected officials to connect with them. I've heard from county judges, I've heard from regular people that feel like they're not being heard, not being listened to. So to me, that's been the number one lesson. And so I want to be committed to being available, to listening, to being available, and to continue going out to the counties and communities. Yeah.
Was it surprising that they were saying that, or did you have an idea? Like, yeah, I could tell that's kind of the pulse of where we are right now in Arkansas politics.
I was a little bit surprised because for a long time, that's the reputation Arkansas politics has. It's relational. It's relationships. And when I got involved, Republicans lost most of their races. And where we won, it was because the candidates in the party had been very intentional about relationships and building that trust.
Yeah.
So to the extent that this has been lost, it really needs to be regained.
You mentioned a conservative Republican, and you've been involved in the Republican Party for a number of years. You're active in the party. What does that mean to you as far as being active in that state party? And then also, I think you and I and our viewers could agree that we'll see people say, oh, well, I'm a conservative Republican. And then I'm like, that does not mean what you think it means. Or they vote, contradictory to the principles. So talk to us about that.
So first of all, I think being active in the party comes down to serving. I think that you really learn what it means to sacrifice and give up time. As a teenager, I gave up weekends and I gave up evenings because I was going out door to door. I was knocking on doors. I was making phone calls for a cause and for a purpose, right? And I understand how disheartening it can be when you give up that time and you put in that work and you elect somebody that you believe in, and then you start seeing how they might be voting on issues or actions that they might take. And you think, I'm not sure that that's why I gave up those weekends and holidays, right? I worked Fourth of July parades. And so as I spent time working for the state, you do get to understand that things can be complicated sometimes. And there can be different approaches to achieving our goals of smaller government. But when it comes to the land commissioner's office in particular, property rights, right? That's a pillar of conservatism. We believe in freedom. And part of having freedom is being able to decide what to do with your own property, right? I like to say government exists to protect life, liberty, and property. And anytime the government is involved with taking away any of that, it's a serious thing. And so for this office in particular, it is extremely important to have somebody committed to property rights and protecting that. And that selling property is really a matter of last resort. That revenue, those taxes that are owed do need to be collected for the county. But if they can be collected without the property being sold, that's absolutely how it needs to be done.
I see on your flyer, you say as land commissioner, I will ensure no land is sold to America's enemies. Talk to us about that. Why is that something that you put on your flyer? And is that a conversation that you have with constituents as you travel across the state?
It is. And the reason why it's on there is because of those conversations. As I first started putting together this campaign, I first started talking to people. That was a question I got, and I got it pretty consistently. And I really understood that this is a concern that people have. Now, it's like a lot of other concerns and dangers that it can be hard to know how deep of a problem or how widespread the problem is because it's partly an unknown, right? Nobody goes around saying, I'm a bad actor, I'm here to take your land.
Make your job so much easier.
It would. It would. But I also know, because I worked for the state, how easy it is for politicians to just have a form where you swear, I am not a bad actor and I'm going to buy this property and everything's fine. So right now, the Secretary of Agriculture in Arkansas has the authority to request that the Attorney General investigate if there's suspected bad activity in the ownership of farmland.
And we've seen that.
We've seen a couple of those investigations. Yeah. And I think the Land Commissioner's Office should start by asking for that same authority. Right now, they don't have the authority to request that investigation. I'm a big believer in staying within the bounds of the law and the bounds of the Constitution. But I think that that's a reasonable step that we can take so that if there's a concern, it can start to be investigated. I also understand that a lot of bad actions are opportunistic. I learned that when I was at the State Securities Department and we were protecting people from financial crimes. And so being the state that asks these questions, being the state that has the ability to investigate and shows the willingness to investigate, hopefully that will prevent some of these things in the first place.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Something else that I think, let me ask you this. And this necessarily wouldn't be anything that would involve directly the land commissioner's office, but there is such a renewed push for eliminating property taxes.
That's right.
And Governor DeSantis is talking about it. I feel as though he's really, really leading the way, talking about that as far as listeners across the country. I have not heard Governor Sanders talk about that. I hope she does. And if she has, that's amazing. What are your thoughts on that? Some of our viewers and a lot of people would say, well, if you have to continue to pay property taxes and you don't own that property, what do you believe?
So I am a big believer in supporting our local government. And so I think that if a county feels like they can eliminate those taxes, they absolutely should. I like to say that I'm from Little Rock, but I try not to act like it. Because I don't think Little Rock needs to make the decisions for all of our counties. Because the situation we have in Scott County and Prairie County and Little River County are very different than the situations we have in Benton and Washington counties. And that's very different from what we have in Pulaski and Faulkner County, right? The counties aren't the same. One of the things I learned on the campaign that I thought was interesting that I've carried with me is in Searcy County, there's not a place to buy a pair of shoes. And so counties like that, they don't really have a sales tax that could make up for no property tax because those real estate taxes are what fund the county. But if you're in Northwest Arkansas and you've got strong, robust economies, you probably could offset real estate taxes other ways. So I'm a big believer in just letting the counties tackle their problems the way that they want to,
Yeah.
tackle their challenges the way that they want to.
Okay.
So I don't think we should tell them how to do it.
Okay.
But people ask about Florida, and I saw that, and I'm very interested in seeing how they want to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Because typically, when you have a state that doesn't have an income tax, they make up for it in real estate taxes.
Yeah.
You're from Texas, right?
Yes.
And so people from Texas really understand
Um,
that you might not have that income tax, but then your real estate taxes are very painful.
They are. They are.
And so as our income taxes in Arkansas go down, and I want to give a lot of credit to Republican leadership over the years for bringing that down, as that gets closer and closer to zero, I'm really interested to see how Florida.
They make that up.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. It will be interesting to watch. And then hopefully, if it's done really well, it could be a model. We'll see. Something else that some of our viewers may be interested in, and this has been a conversation I've seen over the past several months. And, even when I think back, well, I was going to say the Buffalo River. The Buffalo River was a big fight as well regarding that. I guess it was 2023, I believe. A conversation regarding state land versus, privatizing that. And there is a growing concern that there's this redesignation on some of these state lands to be used for private use. And it could be whether it's the Waltons or whomever, in Arkansas specifically. That's a great concern for people.
Right.
And so how do you balance that in your office? And what does that look like to you?
So the first thing is, 90% of what the office does is the sale of tax delinquent properties, right? And that other 10% doesn't actually have a lot to do with property management or land management like you think it would. And like a lot of other states, especially west of the Mississippi, they do manage land and they do manage it for profit and they bring that revenue into the state. In Arkansas, under the statute, the land commissioner is supposed to be the repository for all the deeds and land owned by the state, but that's not actually reality.
Okay.
And so as we have game and fish and parks and tourism, the way that's happened in reality is all that land is held by the agency. When I was at the agriculture department, the plant board owned their own building and held the title. And so I think in order to really maximize good land management, the first step would be to follow the law and bring all the state-owned property into one place. So at least we know what we have.
Yeah.
Because right now, Game and Fish manages Game and Fish property. Parks and Tourism manages Parks and Tourism property. That is one thing that, because the law requires it, I think needs to be worked on a little bit.
That's interesting. And you've seen, maybe it's because they have been able to, or they are doing it, these agencies have grown. Their appropriations have grown. That would be really interesting to see it come all under one umbrella and to see how any of that would possibly shift or change.
And one of the things I learned in the land commissioner's office is when Arkansas was first created as a state, the records for where the property boundaries were started in the land commissioner's office because people were already living in Arkansas when we became a state. And so surveyors will still come into the office to figure out where the original property lines are sometimes. But through the years, Arkansas became a state in 1836. Through the years, a lot of those property records at the local level, the county courthouse, were lost to fires. They were lost to floods. And so property that the state has owned for a long time, it can be kind of difficult to figure out. So I don't know that anybody can even answer the question, how much land does the state own in Arkansas? That would be a really good question. And I think it would be a big project.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably a worthwhile undertaking.
Yeah. What else would you like to see the office do, or what would you like to accomplish?
So understanding that the land commissioner's office supports the counties. I was talking to some county collectors asking, how can I serve you and make your life better if I were to be elected? And boy, were they quick with an answer. They said, give us our money faster. Because the land commissioner is allowed to hold on to the money for a certain amount of time. And that's partly just to make it easier so that you're making fewer lump sum payments instead of constant payments. And I think that period has been shortened over time. But whatever I can do to shorten that, because we're really collecting the money on behalf of the counties, and let's get it out to our local communities. I'm a big fan of local control.
Yeah, I think a lot of Conduit viewers would agree with that as well. Early voting happens February 17th. Is that correct?
16th, I think.
16th. Okay.
Time's ticking away.
That'll be here so soon.
It will.
And then, of course, the primary is March 3rd. Tell our viewers what really sets you apart. So there are two Republicans running in this primary race. What sets you apart from your opponent, whom right now is currently Secretary of State, Paul Jester? He was appointed to that position by the Governor Sanders. So what sets you guys apart, and why should voters choose you?
For me, I think the easy answer is experience. I've worked for the state for about 9 years, including a few years in the land commissioner's office. I've managed teams of people. I've worked through Governor Asa Hutchinson's transformation of state government. And so we got to go through a lot of reorganization challenges, and I think we did really well. I also think because I've worked for myself for the last few years, I started doing some real estate and started to understand what it's like to actually risk my own money, right? I think that experience of knowing what it's like to take risks on my own is a really big help to making sure that I steward taxpayer dollars just as well.
What else would you want our viewers to know? How can they find you and your campaign or get in touch with you?
VoteChristian.com is my website. Vote Christian Olson for Arkansas Land Commissioners Facebook. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me. But I jokingly like to say, look for the only Christian on the ballot. But vote Christian, just vote Christian, and time is ticking away. I'm proud to say we've covered more than 16,000 miles on this campaign, and it's just because we are trying to run a very county and community-focused race.
Anything else you want to add before we let you go?
Well, it is really an honor to be supported by a lot of folks in the Conduit family, especially through the Conduit Freedom Caucus, because just of the commitment to small government and free enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that has always mattered to me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Christian, for coming to Fayetteville and doing this interview with us, and good luck in your race.
Thank you. I appreciate it.